Hi, the media. Appreciate if you're joining me this morning. I know it's bright and early, especially over here on the West Coast. But today is Wednesday, April the 18th. Don't forget to donate if you haven't to RonPaul2012.com. It's very important that we reach 2.5 million. You know, we are running behind schedule, but right now, currently, as of right now, we're at 1.3 million. So we need to reach that goal as soon as possible. Hopefully, if we're not there by Friday, people will get paid on Friday, and hopefully we can get that goal quickly as soon as possible. Now, today, on today's show, we're going to talk about a couple headlines. Got a lot of police state going on. If you've been listening to the last few shows, there's been a lot going on around the country with the police killing, tasing people. We got some more stories here. Now, some headlines we're going to touch on today. Could Ron Paul supporters overwhelm the GOP Senate district conventions? That was in the Texas Monthly on April 15th. Also, Lynn Torgerson, running for Congress, says the GOP convention was overrun by Ron Paul libertarians. And so we'll get into that. She's complaining about us. Let's see here. Also, later on in the segment, or later on in the show, we're going to have a couple of clips for you. Like I said, in regards to the police state, we have a boy, a young teenager that gets shocked 31 times. He was at a medical facility supposed to be for kids that, have problems or irate, things like that. But anyways, they use shock treatment. We finally got the tape released, so we're gonna play that. Also, a family speaks out, had an issue with one of their sons or family members. Calls the cops over to come help him take the medication, because he's ill. Anyways, the cops tase him and shoot him right there in the kitchen floor. So we'll be talking about that. Texas man, police come to the wrong address, end up shooting the man's dog, pretty much right in front of him. And also we have undercover officers are going to start riding the metro. So I know we're looking forward to that. Bigger police state, more police state. We just got to educate the masses, that the guns are being turned on us. The police aren't acting like grown men anymore. They're trigger happy, taser happy. And finally, we have here another clip coming up later in the show. 6-year-old gets handcuffed, 6-year-old kindergartner. All right, so let's jump into this first headline. Could Ron Paul supporters overwhelm the GOP Senate district conventions? It says here, this email went out to party regulars over the signature of Bill Crocker, Republican National Committeeman. And I just want to make sure, because we have new sound, that we're coming in clearly for you. Okay. Let's see here, because spare with me one moment. I want to make sure that we're coming in good for you. We're on a new connection here with Skype. All right, there we go. So I know I'm coming in. Okay, so the email said, please plan to attend the Senate district conventions next Saturday and bring all your friends. We need to be sure we are not overwhelmed by the Ron Paul people who still want to send a list of all Ron Paul people to the state convention. Says here, obviously the Republican hierarchy is worried about this. If the Ron Paul forces are really organizing a takeover of the Senate district conventions, and Bill Crocker seems to be worried that this is what they are doing, there could be a statewide fight for control of the Republican Party of Texas. How realistic this threat is and what it might mean is unclear at the moment, but it is certainly one more example of the cracks and fissures that divide the state GOP. If the lack of a meaningful presidential primary saps the enthusiasm of Republican voters and cuts into attendance at the local GOP conventions, the Ron Paul threat could get very serious indeed. So, who's threatening anybody? We're threatening your power. We're threatening tyranny. Yeah. But we want our freedoms back, and that's what the Republicans are supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about small government, low taxes, the Constitution. That's what they haven't been about. So now they're upset that we don't caught on to the truth, caught on to the Constitution, and now we're about to run everybody out of town. And they don't like that. And Texas is Ron Paul's home state as well. So, that's even more reason to be scared of us, or not to be scared of us, to be aware that we're coming. Basically, we are coming. Now, Lynn Torgerson is running for office for Congress. I have an article here that was on April 16th. She says the GOP convention she went to was overrun by Ron Paul libertarians. She's basically complaining here. And I forgot which state she was in. Let me see here. Republican candidate for U.S. Congress posted the statement below at her campaign website Monday. Let's see here. On Saturday, April 14th, I attended the Republican 5th Congressional District endorsing convention. There was a stage at the front of the room. Approximately 6 people were seated on the stage. Every person seated was a Ron Paul libertarian. The convention was overrun by Ron Paul libertarians. More than 2/3 of the delegates were Ron Paul libertarians. When I mentioned that we were at a Republican convention, they laughed out loud. They began the convention. There was no opening prayer. Boo-hoo. Not even a mention of it. There was no pledge of allegiance to the U.S. flag. Then a man front stood up and requested that we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. But Allah, upon looking around, there was not a flag to be seen. Then a clown came forward, dressed in garb with a very large hat that someone resembled a flag. And then it goes on to say that, they try to cut her time, and I don't believe necessarily everything she said. We are about freedom of speech, so we're going to let everybody speak, but it needs to be fair across the board. So she was complaining about her speak time being cut in half, and that, the audience won't really buy into stuff she was saying. They're full of Ron Paul supporters. Now, the great news about this is the very next day, another article comes out, and basically she is dropping out of the race now. A day after slamming Republican delegates in Minnesota's 5th District as Ron Paul libertarians, GOP candidate Lynn Torgerson said she is leaving the race for the seat in Congress occupied by 3-term DFL incumbent Keith Ellison. No, I'm not going to continue running in this election cycle, Torgerson wrote in an email to Fridley Patch Tuesday. The party is free to fully support Chris Fields. Fields is the rival Republican candidate who won the backing of 5th District Party delegates on the first ballot at their convention Saturday. I also believe he's a libertarian Ron Paul supporter. So that's what we do, man. This is what we need to happen. We need people to start dropping out. Just get out of the way. Just move. Get out of the way. The freedom about to take this over. The Constitution is back. Ron Paul is waking people up. And we caught on to y'all tricks. We caught on to the way you guys are trying to manipulate the system. And complaining about a flag, complaining that they're not doing a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Look, man, I understand people want to take pride in their country and all that and patriotism, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's the big deal about a flag, man? I mean, that's not what makes us who we are. It's about what we're doing. It's like people that run around are people that get offended by things like this. Don't you get offended by how many people we're killing overseas? Don't you get offended by how we're robbing the taxpayers? Or don't you get offended by all the money that we print up, or the torture that we're doing, or the secret prisons, or the drones that we're flying around? I mean, that's what to get upset about. The fact that you can't, do a Pledge of Allegiance, that means nothing to me, man. The flag represents a lot of, unfortunately, our flag represents a lot. You look in our history, we have, slavery. Look at our school system, justice system. I mean, there's so much things about this country. There's not much to brag about, okay? Even if other countries are doing worse, we got a lot of work to do. So, to me, that's just irrelevant complaining about that. Let's talk about the issues. And then lastly here, before we go on break, Tim Thomas, in case you weren't aware, of the Boston Bruins, he's the goalie, shows his support for Ron Paul. A Ron Paul supporter, screen name Just a Tree, has posted a picture on RonPaulForums.com showing goalie Tim Thomas of the Boston Bruins holding up a Ron Paul sign, which is more good news. The more celebrities, the more people, sports players, whoever it is, come out, the better. And if you weren't aware, Tim Thomas was actually invited to the White House, his whole team. This is like a few months back, half a year back maybe. I got it on my YouTube page, Apaco757. And he rejected. He refused to go to the White House to support, because he didn't believe in what the White House was doing and what Obama was doing. So that's awesome, man. Most people would flip out at the chance to go to the White House and meet the president and things like that. Unless I'm going to interview him, I don't really care to meet him. I got some questions for him anyways that you probably don't want to answer. But, yeah, you're listening to Occupy the Media. I'm your host, Paco, and we'll be back after the break.
Dr. Ron Paul, more than 4,000 babies delivered. A man of faith, committed to protecting life.
This whole notion of life not being valuable just is something I was never able to accept. I happened to have walked into an operating room where they were doing an abortion on a late pregnancy. They lifted out a small baby that was able to cry and breathe, and they put in a little bucket and put it in the corner of the room and pretended it wasn't there.